My name is Robert Habermeier. I'm a co-founder of Polkadot. I work mostly on the implementation side of things. I'm well acquainted with the research and I do contribute a bit there. I am really a coder at heart, so I love to just build the product. What Polkadot is a heterogeneous multi-chain system. So we started from this idea that there's going to be many chains, not just one. The idea that if you can specialize the work that blockchains are doing, that you can achieve much higher throughput, much better results because you don't have to have a generic computation framework which is encumbered by its generality. So what Polkadot provides is a framework for writing those sorts of specialized blockchains, as well as a consensus system to glue them together. So where we are now in the Polkadot roadmap is we've deployed Proof of Concept 3. So that took the buildings of Proof of Concepts 1 and 2, which implemented on-chain governance and an initial implementation of parachains consensus, respectively. So POC 3 built on top of that and added the first implementation of Grandpa consensus. So our process there was essentially we spent a couple of months researching, getting the proofs down, formalizing it into a paper, which will be published soon, I promise. And from there, once we had the proofs down, we started to write code. There's some repositories on GitHub. We integrated it into Substrate, which is the blockchain framework used to write Polkadot and is also geared up to write parachains as well. And once that implementation was in a working state, we deployed onto POC 3. The cool thing about Substrate is that we've got this isolation of consensus and state machine, so we didn't actually have to change much of the implementation of the Polkadot node itself. We just had to change this one line of code that said, use the old consensus algorithm to use Grandpa consensus instead. The next milestone is Proof of Concept 4. So that's what we've done in Proof of Concept 2 was the initial stab at parachain agreement. So what this was doing is we had validators getting agreement on the parachain block bodies and state transitions. So essentially we could get the validators to agree on how the state of the parachains was changing over time. What we didn't have was one of Polkadot's crucial features, which is to pass messages between parachains, to create this interconnected web of chains that you can build apps that actually leverage the powers of those chains. That's what Proof of Concept 4 aims to deliver. We've already merged in the code upstream. We are in the process of testing, refining some of the consensus and networking changes that go along with that, but that will be rolled out fairly soon as well. So what we've got leading up to the launch is essentially one more major milestone. We will probably do a couple of value-bearing testnets in the meantime. So after we do the interchain messaging implementation, we have POC 5, which follows it up with the implementation of economic games that are carried out on-chain to essentially ensure honesty of participating actors. So specifically that's slashing for consensus misbehavior, that's figuring out when validators aren't keeping parachain block data available when they should be, and also a validity game to figure out when validators have committed bad state transitions to the relay chain. So once those are in, you can actually start to run value-bearing testnets because at that point, theoretically, all the economic game theory mechanisms are in place. Once we've done significant testing to make sure that all the mechanisms are working as expected, we will gear up for the launch and set it off. Oh, of course. So a lot of people ask, what is the purpose of a smart contract chain when you have this world of chains that function for many purposes? Well, the truth is that when you have asynchronous messaging between chains, there are a lot of inefficiencies associated with that. So the messages can take some time to propagate, especially if you have multiple levels. The way that I like to think about smart contract platforms like Ethereum is that they actually are optimized for a special purpose, and that special purpose is intra-operability as opposed to interoperability. So what Ethereum has is currently a huge network of smart contracts, this massive network effect. People are not going to stop deploying apps to Ethereum anytime soon. When I think about the architecture of a cross-chain application, I think of a controller component that lives on the smart contract chain that draws information from other controller components, but farms out work to those specialized chains. That's really where I see Ethereum sort of fitting in as sort of like the mastermind components of all these dApps. Well, Polkadot is important for that because it gives those dApps access to all those other chains that are specialized for things like file storage or getting real-world Oracle data, decentralized exchange, that would just simply not be as efficient to carry out in the Ethereum network. But the fact that the access is given enables Ethereum apps to leverage those powers. One possible use case of Polkadot, other than the ones that I've mentioned already, is an Internet of Things chain. Essentially, you have a parachain which does nothing but receive and log messages from other chains, and also knows how to send messages out that are sent by devices connected to it. So essentially what Internet of Things devices can do, these are usually on very low bandwidth devices that can receive a few kilobytes per day, maybe, optimistically. So what these do is they check in once or twice a day. They download a compact proof of finality of the Polkadot relay chain and some Merkle proofs of what messages have been received to their accounts on that Internet of Things chain. So that means that they can essentially interact with the rest of the Polkadot network for very little bandwidth every day. The reason for that is because they don't need to process all this other sort of bloat of state data that comes with the transactions and messages and things that they don't care about.